at least top 10.
He is.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I mean, quite frankly, I just said a position of need, which it was. And then at least as far as the MLS concerned, there wasn't anyone better available.
Right.
Certainly not.
But,
especially after Hagelin left for FCC.
What I point out here is the fact that he has an injury history, okay?
Yeah.
That's a little concerning to me. Regression, even a little regression, can be a trend.
That's another...
It can be.
It can be a trend.
It can
It
be,
could
but
also
if you-
be kind of a, some players go through sophomore slumps.
They do. Yeah.
And if
Where, with how he slowly started in the league to begin with,
Yep.
maybe that's just kind of a year and he'll be back.
And that's another thing. If you want to talk about trends, I mean, and you bring up the injury concern, I mean, I don't know. Well, maybe he did have an injury concern, but for the last 3 seasons, he's played a lot. He's played a lot. So, I mean, if he's trending in the right direction, he hasn't had any injury issues over the last 3 years. And, I mean, I'm concerned that when I walk up to the bar, I'm going to get hurt. I mean, anybody could get hurt. It's kind of an odd thing to say. Well, yeah, I'm worried about Quintero getting injured. I'm worried about everybody. Just because he had that injury, I think he's trending in the right direction.
My concern is once you have an injury, it seems like, especially injuries like him, things start to kind of pop back up. And maybe he has 1, 2, 3 years of great play for United. I mean, maybe he does.
Right.
But there are a little bit of concerns. But on the flip side, this is the kind of deal you have to make when you're United. This is what you have to do.
Well, especially when they're in year 3 of a 3-year plan.
6-year plan, 7-year plan. What was it, Dave?
It was a 7-year plan, but I mean, I've gone on record. I'm seriously backpedaling, on that, for the record. I'm starting to back it up.
They're very obviously saying, we're in year 3 of our 3-year plan. We need to make this one count.
And we're in a new stadium this year.
Yeah.
They have to do it.
I mean, a lot can happen between now and the end of the season, but I mean, when we finished up our 2018 season at Columbus, between that day and today, a lot has changed.
It has.
And I mean, that's all I could talk about back then was I don't see it. But we've already seen in the last month they're making the moves that they need to make.
4 big moves.
Yeah.
Right.
4.
So the next one, of course, is Metanire, who we talked about last episode kind of as if he was already signed, but he wasn't.
And he is now.
It was finalized on the 25th. So, I mean, I think, personally, obviously, we don't have a lot of access to League 2 games.
Yeah.
Right. So when I look at Metanire, it's all highlights of whatever I can find on YouTube. I mean, I look at it this way. He spent, I think it was 7 or 8 years at FC Metz in League 2. Then he went to Stade Reims in League 2 still, where he helped them get promoted. We talked about that last episode.
Helped them get up there, yep.
The big thing is, okay, so how do these compare to MLS? In my opinion, I think MLS is kind of, if it was like a scale of 1 to 10, 1 was League 2, 10 was League 1, MLS is kind of like 3 or 4.
Okay.
Like it might be slightly above League 2, but it's not quite League 1.
Sure.
So the fact that he apparently didn't work out in League 1,
yes,
I don't think is a bad thing, because I think League 1 is a little bit better. I think maybe the bottom half of teams in League 1 would probably be pretty comparable to MLS.
Yeah.
But so I think overall we're getting a guy who is, European quality.
yes.
And I think he performed exceptionally at League 2 level. So I think it's pretty much a lateral move, in my opinion.
Yeah, but speaking of Metanire, and obviously, like you said, we haven't seen a lot of them. We've seen some highlights. But, he definitely seems like he's a guy that can come into the MLS and make an impact, especially, for the Loons. As you see, like, if he's playing his right back position and he's just a bit more athletic, he's speedy, he can go up that side, you know. And especially now with the other additions that the United made, that the Loons made, I should say, as he shoots up the side, I think that the rest of the back can fill that out.
And that's a big point to make because with Opara coming in, it's guaranteed Opara starting at center back, right?
Yes.
So I think we could probably put significant money on Calvo being at left back.
Good.
Because Kelman and Boxall are better center backs than Calvo.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have anyone for left back other than a rookie who they do suggest is MLS ready, but
he's better than Calvo?
Yeah. So I think with that in mind, we then have Gregus and we have Alonso, who we'll briefly talk about, I'm sure, in a few minutes. So Metanire can go up the sideline and be comfortable knowing that we have a defensive mid. We have another guy that's the wheelhouse who's also played defensive mid.
Yep.
We have a stout back line. So I think it's really good. The fact that he is so athletic and being able to move forward. Yeah.
I think that just a couple other things like Ike Opara. I mean, I think Sporting Kansas City was one of those teams that I followed prior to the United coming, prior to the Loons coming up into MLS, and just knowing what he can bring to the table is impressive.
Yeah. Well, I look at the end of last season, and what did we say? We needed to upgrade our defense.
Yeah, that was the main thing.
And we have now, in a very short period of time, boom, boom, boom.
Basically 3 weeks.
We added 3 new starters.
And that's what I want to say about Ike Opara was just watching some of the highlights and knowing what he does is not only is he going to improve our back line, that's a fact, but just looking at the size that he brings. I think he's 6'2". I think he was responsible for a couple headed goals last season. Yep. He's got that presence that the Loons seriously lacked last year. How many you talk about the set piece efficiency, we talked about that ad nauseum last year.
Yes, we did.
It just wasn't something the Loons were capable of, it seemed like.
The amount of calories that we burned waving scarves on corners for absolutely no reason.
For nothing.
So you could definitely see Ike Opara taking a prominent role in some of those set pieces, at least, being up there, maybe getting a header opportunity or scoring chances there.
I can see right now, Bobby Shuttleworth tossing back a cold beer and going, this is the type of defense I want to play behind. Yeah, this is great. Thank you, Manny.
Yeah, it's possible.
Brings up another point that I want to get into a little bit here, guys. We, in this podcast, we'll say it again, we've been down on Manny a lot about certain things, right?
Yes.
Mainly about signings and other things that have happened.
Yeah.
Now with this 4th new player coming in, if by chance United makes it to the playoffs this year, do we have to give Manny some credit for turning it around?
Short answer.
If they make it to the playoffs?
Yeah.
I guess.
We have to give him a little bit of props.
Yeah. I mean, not knowing how their decisions go, we have to assume that it was Manny, so yes. Yeah.
Yeah, the short answer is definitely yes, you'd have to. Only because that was the plan to make the playoffs. Obviously, you want to see some success further than that, and maybe some sustained success. But my thought is I've never seen a general. I mean, I would call him the GM. Okay.
Yeah.
He's pretty much the GM. I don't remember in Minnesota sports history a GM going into an offseason with so much doubt and people saying, Manny, you suck, you're terrible, get him out of here, and then doing a complete 180 and signing four
I was
going to
say,
isn't
that how the Timberwolves have been like every season? But now that you say the 180.
It's a 180 type of deal, right? I mean, I've seen GMs go into the offseason for different sports around here, and they don't do anything.
Right.
And they get shit, the rest of the year. This time, Manny went to the offseason and said, well, I have a plan. I hope he had a plan.
I hope so.
And he did something about it.
Right.
Yeah.
And not just one guy. We're talking about 4 guys.
Right, exactly. And then we touched on it earlier, but you can argue back and forth. We all agree that the Ike Opara, the most recent move, was a good move. I mean, a good move in the sense that it filled a position of need. Yep. You can argue that they overpaid or they didn't overpay, but the bottom line was they went out and did what they had to do to fill a position of need. So in my opinion, they didn't overpay. And you look at that target allocation money, $900,000. Yes, it seems like a lot, and it is, but that's money that they are getting. I think it's $1.2 million of TAM a year. They're given that.
Yep,
right. They're not given that to put in their bank and save and make profits for them.
And you can make trades for TAM.
Right.
And they basically, with considering the Ramirez trade, they basically had, what is that, 1,900? Or 1.9, sorry.
1.9. Yep.
Yeah, and
1.9 million.
And actually, if you almost can't go one for one, because with Ramirez, I think almost half of it was GAM or general allocation money, which has a little bit more value.
Yeah.
So you can't just say, we got 800,000, we got 700, 800,000 for Christian, and then that we paid that for Ike Opara. But and we don't need to get in the intricacies of that right now, but it's just that general allocation money gives you a little bit more flexibility, so it's essentially worth more. I saw something online where
1.2,
1.5. You could say GAM has a value of 1.5 times TAM, but we can get back to that later if we want. But what I will say is it was a question I've heard a couple times. I'm asking you guys: would you trade Christian Ramirez straight up for Ike Opara if that's not what this was? But would you? And I mean, in my opinion, I would say yes, you would.
You know what? I would. Just looking at our defense and what we needed on defense, and knowing that we have good wingers, we got good forwards. Christian, maybe, but Christian was.
Yeah.
Well, he didn't fit the system.
Exactly.
And the reality is, and we've talked on this before numerous times, is Adrian Heath and Manny Lagos have a system that they want to use, and he didn't fit that system. Now, people can bitch about that all they want, but look, yes, was Christian Ramirez a good forward?
Of course he was.
Very good.
Yes.
And he probably will play today against Costa Rica with the national team, and fantastic. But Lagos and Heath and presumably McGuire all had this vision, and whatever that vision ended up being, he didn't fit this system.
Nope.
So he moved on.
Exactly right.
And so I would be with all of you in saying that, I guess, Dave, you didn't necessarily say that, did you?
I said I was. Okay. I agreed that I would trade him.
Yeah. The trade made sense. And if it was a trade, it would make sense.
As tough as it is, because he's one of our guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's I wanted to bring it up, and people can think about it. And I just wanted to bring up that question: would you do a 1-for-1 trade? That's not what they did, but you can't help but think of it that way. And I just think that just because we're having this conversation, I think to me tells me that what they paid for Ike Opara, they didn't overpay, in my opinion.
No, again, it was TAM. I don't see him as overpaying. We have TAM. We get to use TAM. I guess,
and that they're gonna get another.
They're gonna get another round of it.
$1.2 million next year. I mean, they give MLS teams that money to use.
And you're taking away a good player from a rival in KC.
Yeah, good point. And that's another thing. It's not like Sporting Kansas City. They did not want to trade him. They did not want to let him go.
A lot of fans on Twitter were saying, how could you let the guy go? There were some fans going, we fleeced another team for TAM money on a guy who's going to suck.
Right.
But, again, they didn't want to trade him.
No.
They decided they needed to go in another direction.
Well, and it wasn't even that. Just a little background. It was a couple months ago. Ike Opara basically asked for a raise. Now, I find that a little interesting because if you look at his contract over the years, he signed a new contract prior to 2017, but every year since he joined Sporting Kansas City, he had gotten a raise.
A bump, yeah.
Including last year. He made almost double what he made in 2017, which he should. But basically, he said, listen, I want a raise. He that was probably a closed conversation with the coach, GM. But then his agent actually made it public saying he's looking for a trade. And that did not rub Kansas City the right way.
Well, and they had just upgraded their defense, making Opara have to compete for sure.
Yeah.
So it was one of those things where he wanted a trade, but it wasn't even guaranteed he was going to start.
Yeah, and he became expendable at that point. So like I said, we've made 4 pretty big moves this offseason.